Most people assumed that Diem was fearless. They saw a hard-working girl who lifted heavy baskets, walked alone to the marketplace at dawn, and never complained even when exhaustion bent her shoulders like old bamboo. But there was one thing that terrified her more than any storm or hardship: hope.
Hope was dangerous. Hope meant dreaming of things she might never have. And now, she stood on the very edge of it because Toan, the mother of the man she secretly loved, had asked to speak with her alone. They were sitting under the old guava tree beside the field. The sound of rustling leaves mingled with the faint chirping of crickets. Diem sat nervously, hands folded tightly in her lap, pretending not to notice how cold her fingers had become. Toan, calm and composed as always, poured tea for both of them. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as if choosing the right moment to strike a question Diem had no armor against. Finally, she spoke. "Diem," she said gently, "do you really care for my son?" The teacup trembled in Diem's hands. No one had ever asked her that so directly, not even Toan himself. She should have denied it. She should have laughed it off, pretended it was nothing more than friendly concern between two people who worked together at the farm. But instead, her voice betrayed her. "I don't know if I have the right to care for him," she whispered. A long silence followed. Toan watched her quietly, her gaze not harsh, but weighing, measuring not Diem's background, not her status, but her heart. And in that silence, Diem felt as though the world had paused to wait for an answer neither of them had spoken yet. Was this a warning, or was it an opening? Diem lowered her gaze, afraid to meet Toan's eyes. She expected disapproval, maybe even a firm instruction to stay away from Toan. After all, why would a woman of status ever want her successful son to be tied to someone like her, a girl with no family, no education, no background worth mentioning? But instead of coldness, Diem heard something entirely different, a sigh. Soft, weary, almost tired of pretending. "I won't lie to you," Toan said, her voice oddly calm. "At first, I was against you." The words struck like a blade, sharp but expected. Diem's chest tightened. She braced herself for rejection. Yet before the pain could settle, Toan continued, "Not because you are unworthy," she added quietly, "but because I was afraid." Diem lifted her head, startled. "Afraid? Her, a mother always worries," Toan went on, staring into her teacup rather than at Diem. "Toan is my youngest child, my only son. I have watched him carry burdens he never complains about. I thought, if he chose a partner, she must be strong enough to walk beside him." She turned then, eyes steady, and I realized perhaps I have been looking in the wrong place for that strength. Diem blinked, unable to speak. "You may not have money, you may not have a fine background, but I have seen you," Toan said. "You work until your hands bleed. You never ask for pity. You stand up, even when life tries to break you." Her voice softened, almost like a confession. "That is strength too." For a moment, Diem forgot how to breathe. It wasn't full approval. It wasn't a blessing. But it was more than she had ever dared to hope for. And hope, the very thing she once feared, flickered quietly to life inside her chest. Diem didn't know when her throat had started to tighten. She blinked rapidly, trying to force back the heat rising behind her eyes. She had always taught herself not to cry, not in front of anyone, not even when no one was watching. Tears were a luxury for people who had someone to comfort them. She never did. But now, sitting under the old guava tree beside Toan, she felt that control slipping. Her vision blurred, and she quickly looked away, pretending to adjust her sleeve. Yet Toan noticed. The older woman paused, watching the young girl struggle to keep her dignity even while her heart trembled. She could have ignored it, let the moment pass, but instead, she reached out and gently covered Diem's fidgeting hands with her own. "Warm, firm, motherly, Diem," she said softly. "You don't have to be so strong in front of me." Those words nearly broke her. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Diem bit her lip so hard it stung. She refused to let her tears fall. "Not here, not now." But her voice betrayed her, trembling as she whispered, I'm not strong. I just don't know how to be anything else. Toan's expression softened further. She gave Diem's hand a gentle squeeze, as though silently acknowledging a truth she herself had once lived through. Then let someone help you, she said. Strength isn't about bearing everything alone. It's knowing when to share the load. Diem's breath caught. She couldn't speak. She didn't know how to respond. All she could do was sit there, fighting the fragile warmth blooming in her chest, an emotion that both frightened and soothed her. Was this acceptance? Or was it just sympathy? She didn't dare assume. She didn't dare dream. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. The air between them shifted. The tenderness in Toan's touch remained, but her posture straightened slightly, as if it was time to speak, not just as a mother, but as someone holding the future of her son in her hands. She withdrew her hand slowly, folding it over her teacup, her gaze turning firm yet gentle. Diem, she began. I didn't call you here just to comfort you. Diem stiffened. Her heart pounded against her ribs. This was it, the true reason. The moment that would either build a bridge or draw a line she could never cross. Toan inhaled deeply, choosing her words with care. I will not ask you about your feelings again. I already know them. A pause, heavy, certain. Now I want to know something else. Her eyes met Diem's directly, unwavering. If Toan were to reach out to you truly, honestly, would you have the courage to stay by his side? The question struck Diem like thunder. Not do you love him, but if he loves you, will you dare to accept it? Diem's lips parted, but no sound came out. Courage, was that what she lacked? She had endured hunger, loneliness, storms of every kind. Yet the idea of being loved was the one thing she had never dared to face. Toan leaned in slightly, her voice low but steady. I don't need a perfect daughter-in-law. I need someone who will walk with my son, not behind him, not ahead of him, but beside him. Diem stared at her, stunned. So I ask you one last time, Toan said gently. If that day comes, will you run away or will you stay? The world seemed to fall silent. Even the wind paused to hear her answer. Diem's heart hammered painfully inside her chest. Her first instinct was to retreat, to say she wasn't worthy, to step back before she flew too close to something she could never truly have. That had always been her way of surviving. But this time, something held her in place. Perhaps it was the warmth still lingering from Toan's touch. Perhaps it was the first taste of acceptance she had ever received. Or perhaps it was Toan's face flashing in her mind, his smile when he teased her, the unwavering patience in his eyes whenever she tried to push him away. For once, she did not silence her own heart. She lifted her head. Her voice trembled, but her gaze did not waver. If that day comes, she whispered, I won't run. Silence, the kind that echoed louder than any sound. Diem swallowed, forcing the rest out before her courage slipped away. I don't know if I'm good enough for him. I don't have anything to offer. But if he truly reaches out to me, I will stay, even if it scares me. Her confession hung in the air like a fragile flame, small, flickering, but burning with everything she had left. Toan stared at her for a long moment. Then, she smiled. Not widely, not dramatically, just a quiet, knowing smile, the kind only a mother gives when she has received the answer she was waiting for. Good, she said simply, no blessing, no rejection. Just one word, yet it was enough. Because in that single word, Diem felt something she had never been given before. Permission to hope. Sometimes, the greatest act of bravery is not fighting against the world, but allowing someone to stand beside you.
Diem had spent her whole life believing that she must be strong alone. She worked through pain, swallowed her fears, and buried every longing deep within her heart. To her, love was a luxury, something fragile souls chased after, not someone like her who had only learned how to endure. She thought that depending on someone was weakness. She thought that being cared for was a debt she could never afford to repay. So when affection began to bloom in her life, she did what she had always done. She stepped back, convincing herself she wasn't worthy of it. But then came a moment she never expected. Not a grand confession from the man she secretly loved, but a quiet acknowledgement from his mother. A woman who once doubted her now looked her in the eye and said, not through gifts or promises, but through sincere words, that strength is not measured by what you can withstand alone, but by whether you have the courage to let another person walk beside you. In that moment, Diem learned a lesson that many people take a lifetime to understand. Love is not something we earn through perfection. It is something we are allowed to receive, simply because our hearts are capable of giving it back. You do not need to be flawless to be cherished. You do not need to have a perfect past to deserve a beautiful future. Sometimes, hope does not arrive as fireworks or miracles, it arrives as a hand reaching out, waiting to see if you will grasp it. And when that moment comes, the real question is not, am I good enough? But rather, do I dare to accept the happiness standing in front of me? So let this be the lesson. Never let fear disguise itself as humility. Never reject love just because you believe you haven't earned it. The bravest thing you can do is not to endure hardship alone, but to finally whisper, if someone truly wants to stay by my side, I will not run anymore. Because sometimes, hope does not come when the world changes. Sometimes, hope begins the moment you do. There is another truth quietly hidden within this story, one that does not belong solely to Diem, but also to me, Toan. People often believe that only the young must learn how to love. But even those who have lived long, who have seen success and loss, must sometimes relearn what kindness truly means. Toan was not a cruel woman. She was simply cautious, shaped by the fear that her son might choose the wrong path. Like many parents, she mistook protection for control, and expectation for love. Yet when she witnessed Diem's quiet resilience, she realized something essential. Love is not about choosing someone perfect. It is about recognizing someone genuine. In that moment, Toan also learned a lesson of her own, that true wisdom is not clinging to prejudice, but having the grace to let go of it. It takes strength to stand firm in one's beliefs, but it takes even greater strength to admit when those beliefs have changed. Her confession was not merely an approval. It was an invitation, a bridge, a door opening for a girl who had never dared to knock. And that is another lesson worth remembering. Hope is not always something we seek. Sometimes, it is something someone else gives us when they choose to believe in us even before we fully believe in ourselves. So whether you are like Diem, afraid to accept love, or, like Toan, afraid to give it, learn to soften, learn to listen, learn to reach out. Because love is not only found in grand gestures or passionate declarations. Sometimes, it lives in quiet words spoken beneath a guava tree, words that do not promise forever, but simply say, you don't have to walk alone. And sometimes, that is enough to change a life.